All right, so welcome LitCon goers to our Screenwriting Q and A. If we are successfully live streaming, as I believe we are, feel free to leave your comments and questions for our fabulous panel of experts. My name is Alison Wieverdick. You might also recognize me as Phoebe Darqueling from the sci-fi track here at LitCon because I go by many names. But in screenwriting, I do use my real name, which is Allison. So uh, my experience with screenwriting is I'm very new, actually. I just got started in the summer, and I started out by adapting some novels that I'd written. So I am embarking now on starting from scratch. And so I have lots of questions myself that I hope you guys can weigh in on some of these things. So please go ahead, introduce yourself, say a little bit about your involvement in screenwriting and what got you into the biz in the first place. Joe, would you like to start us off?
Sure. My name is Joe Compton. I've made, I've produced, written, directed four short films of my own. I've helped indie filmmakers by producing probably about 12 or 13 other short films. And I've worked on many film sets. I also went to Hollywood for a year and worked as a screenwriter for hire for about a year, a torturous year nonetheless. And yeah, I've been writing. I've been a movie fan all my life. It was my calling, and so I did that. I'm also an indie author, and I run an independent network channel that fosters and supports and highlights independent artists of all kinds, not just movies, but authors and musicians, called Go Indie Now.
Woo. All right, well, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Lisa, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, my name is, well, now I don't know which one to say, Lisa Wood
Oh,
or Elmarie Wood. No,
I'm
it's
sorry.
okay. You just made me realize because often when I write my screenplays, I write them as Lisa Wood,
Hmm.
but it says Elmarie Wood because when I'm doing my fiction, it's always Elmarie Wood. So now I'm like, it's all of it's my name. So, so now that we've got that confusion out of the way, I'm Lisa / Elmarie Wood. I don't know, movies have always been in my blood as well. I'm a psychological horror author. When I went to undergraduate at Howard University, I came out with a degree in film production, which was interesting because I didn't then write or produce anything for, oh my gosh, years, like over 10 years, even more than that. And I don't know, I focused on my novels and then I focused on life, other things coming away. And then just about 5 years ago, I said, well, now you're wasting it, because you're still looking at movies in the same way and you're still interested. So I started writing more screenplays and putting them out in the festival circuit. And I've been really lucky to have gotten some really good feedback. I've gotten some great nods into some of the just really fantastic festivals, and I've won a couple of awards along the way. So that's me.
Awesome. And John.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jon Myers. I teach at Western Kentucky University, first year writing and intro to lit. I've been a screenwriter almost 10 years now, 9 years. It'll be 10 years in December. I've written 12 screenplays, won some minor awards, and I am the only U.S. moderator of Into the Scripts, which is a pretty strong screenwriting and novel writing advice hub out of the UK, out of London. And I can put in a plug for my university. We've always had a BA in film. That's what I have. We've just started our BFA program and allowed 24 new people into the BFA program. The BA program is still there, and so check that out on wku.edu.
What's the difference between the two programs?
Great question. So the 2-year track that I was on. Well, back when I was on it, it was film production. So unlike Joe, I am not a filmmaker. That's when I became so in 2 years, I worked every position above the line and below the line. That's where I found that I did not want to become a filmmaker and that I just wanted to be a screenwriter. I did not enjoy the on-set experience. However, I got pretty efficient at some of the positions, and because I have a pretty good work ethic. But other than that, it's not. That is not my cup of tea. So in the BA in film, it's film theory, it's producing, and it's screenwriting and film history. So you go for 2 years and get your gen ed stuff out of the way. They overlap a little bit, and then 2 years of concentrated film of what I just said. The BFA, the BFA, you still have all that, but it's a 3-year program, and it's very intensive in production. So you have directing and cinematography classes, you have advanced cinematography classes, and you literally are making a film every week. And they pitch their it's a mini laboratory. They pitch their films. Though some then they staff up the crew. It's full-fledged film school.
Wow.
Very cool. Just real quick before we move on to the other questions that got sent in, you used a great industry term, above the line and below the line. Jon, do you mind just defining that for anybody who's listening who might not be familiar?
Sure. Above the line is director, screenwriter, the top producers, and the DP, the cinematographer, the head cinematographer. Below the line is everybody else, gaffers and all the electricians and sparkies and all those 2,000 other names you see on the scroll at the end. That's that's below the line.
And the actors are above the line, right? Or are they?
They are the line.
They are the line.
Actors are the line. Joe said that perfectly.
Do not cross. Yeah. All right. Well, cool. So just to dive into you guys' backgrounds a little bit more, what kinds of stories do you like to tell? And do you have a preference of television or films in terms of your writing? Anybody who wants to start?
I like psychological horror. That's just, I don't know. I've been writing horror stuff since I was 5, so that's kind of where I go. I don't even, and not even comedic horror. I can't, but not the gory stuff. I like psychological, quiet, horror. And that's not to say I don't write any gory stuff. Let me just put that out there to be clear, but that's not where I tend to lean. So for me, the stories are along that line, and it could be, to me, it's such an opening because it's psychological horror straddles the line of so many different genres and subgenres, even within horror fiction, that you can go pretty much anywhere you want. I prefer film, screen, movies. TV is a different animal entirely, really. And even if you're thinking about, the and I don't even know the term for this, maybe you guys do, but the sort of short run 13 episode miniseries is what I would call it, but I don't think that's the common term now. That's a different animal than the thing that comes on every week and you're watching. I mean, it's written completely differently. And while I love watching those, that's just not what I write. I want it to be, you came in, you leave, the story's over.
It's called a limited series. That's what they're calling it in the industry right now.
Oh, okay, cool. That's an easy enough term,
which is just a fancy way of saying it's a mini series.
Right? Okay. I'm like, that's a mini series, but okay.
It's what used to be a mini series, and now it's a limited series. And sometimes those limited series become. So I got to meet Neil Gaiman, and he said 20 years ago, or not 20 years ago, whenever American Gods, the book, first came out, he said, I can't ever imagine this on screen. Well, now you can play out American Gods over 85 episodes, but it didn't start that way, right? It started in this closed, contained, limited run series, and so now he loves that, right? And so it does open up new possibilities. To answer your question, I've written all of them. I prefer film over television. They're completely different animals, completely different beasts. With one exception, I write ensembles, right? And so I love juggling 12 to 16 characters. I had to write a radio script for a competition over winter break. So I don't know, within 6 weeks, which I'm also a slow writer, so that was a challenge for me. So I wrote a radio pilot, and I was limited to only 8 characters. It was torture for me. There are contests where they want to have a rom-com with 5 characters. I just can't do it. It gets too. I need to juggle all of those balls at the same time. I have a system where I can keep track of how long it's been, how many scenes it's been since we've seen Mary, and it was torture to have 6 to 8 characters for the radio script that I wrote.
Do you tend to do like multiple timelines then, or like the ancestors and the contemporary people, or is it really just like you've got these different groups and they all happen to overlap at some point? Like how does that work?
Normally all within the same timeline. However, I do have there's 2. So you guys know that Writing Aristotle was a feature that but it was one of the nominees at the Atlanta Comedy Film Festival. So I've completed a sequel to that. So it's 5 years earlier. So it's not all the same characters, but it's in that same world. And other than the Marvel universe, you don't really have spin-offs like you had in the 70s, right? Where All in the Family spin off Maude and the Jeffersons. Writing Aristotle has a spin-off called Meeting Alexander that's 5 years earlier. So that's in 1908, then it goes to 1903. And I'm currently, those are both rom-coms. I used that same universe. So now we're in 1899 on the 3rd one, Discovering Caroline. That one's halfway finished, and it's a supernatural thriller. And so I left my genre, but I still have an ensemble, and it's 5 years earlier again. But just that world, those are the only instances where I've played with the timeline.
And Joe, you know all about supernatural thrillers.
Yes, yeah, I've done comedy, I've done psychological horror, I've done thrillers. I also prefer film because I've worked in the dredge of TV, which is called sitcoms. And writing for those, you learn very quickly that they suck. And it's a really terrible way to make a living. TV has always been I've looked at series Bibles and things like that before and helped people out with that kind of thing. But I kind of tend to gravitate toward film. I've always had a love for it since I was little. So I always wanted to make movies. I just found that fascinating. So that's always where I tend to lean. But if ever the opportunity came where there was a series that I would enjoy, I would of course jump at the chance. But because that's the new thing, that's the thing that everybody's doing now. So if that's the way to get in, that's the way to get in. So getting in is the important part in that equation.
What part, I'm interested, Joe, what part was that sucked about being in the writer's room, a sitcom writer's room?
Having like people take your jokes or your thoughts and kind of turn them into sludge. It's kind of like taking a recipe and deconstructing it, and then taking the parts of it that you don't like out and making it bland. And that's kind of how they do, because you start with a crass joke, and then it gets watered down, and then it goes through censors and it gets even more watered down, and the process is terrible. It's just
I had a similar experience, except the other way. So I was in a workshop run by Kirker Butler, and so he writes for Family Guy, and he was the showrunner on the Cleveland show. And so I was in a room with 18 writers, and I saw it go from crass joke to the most disgusting crass joke that could never be on television within the course of 45 minutes. And so very similar experience. The storyline that we wound up with was nothing like the one that started. And even for Family Guy, it probably would have never aired. And so that's
See, that would have been a room I would have enjoyed. I'm
Yeah, I
talking
think
like,
you would have.
I'm talking like, you know, not to devalue it, but like a watered down version of Friends kind of thing, where it's like the joke is so obvious and it leads to the next joke that it's like the worst joke you could possibly think. It's like watching 40 minutes of dad jokes, you know, and it's just like, oh.
Yeah. So Joe, you threw out a term that I think would be good to define for people. You mentioned series Bibles. What is a series Bible?
A series Bible is a way in which people pitch their idea to Hollywood. They create, it's kind of like a treatment or synopsis for our author friends out there, but it's really detailed in the idea of how point A gets to point B, levels down characters, it takes down the story, it covers how the entire production will go in terms of how you see it as a writer. So that's basically what that is. And everybody nowadays asks for that because they want to see your vision in full form, without having to ask you to give you 14 scripts, basically. So
I am the odd woman out because I'm actually interested in television writing instead of writing features. And my reasoning for that was I started out writing novels and then I also wrote short stories. But so my first project was to try to take my first novel and make it a feature. And I had an ensemble cast. I had 4 main protagonists and then a really interesting sort of gray area antagonist, and then some very explicit antagonists. And you got a chance to spend time with all of them. And in order to fit in the actual driving the plot moments, I had to gut a character's arc in a way that just killed me. Like and this was I had a queer love story that I felt really good about having in there, and I had to change that character's goals to give her a happy ending by the end of the movie. And so I turned around and I was like, well, screw that. I'm going to do this as a limited series instead. So the pilot that I am currently editing, for Riffmaker, what I actually did was I went back the 24 hours before the novel started and did sort of this was how I established all of the characters. That was so freeing. It was so nice to feel like I could have the space. And so I have written one feature that was never anything else. And so like starting from an idea that was a feature was a little bit easier, but just in general, I just find myself gravitating towards a longer form storytelling, but not the 22 episode series, the limited series. So yeah, for me, television feels like a more natural fit for the kind of scope of story and world, because I like fantasy and sci-fi, and so the world is so big that that's sort of where I tend to go. So one of the questions that got sent in, people were asking about the lengths for features and for television. And so anybody want to field that, sort of maybe the ideal length for yours?
90 pages for a feature is the standard industry. And then for a television, basically the way you look at a screenplay is it's 1 minute per page, right? And so you want to do 90 minutes for a feature, and then you can do 30 or 60 for whatever aim you're going for. We were just talking about this before we started, but I have a friend who a guy I just interviewed who was in features and now he's doing series. And so he's kind of doing an unconventional web series, which is each episode was about 18 to 16 minutes, which is unusual. Usually for a drama, which is what he was doing, is about 45 to 60. And then, you know, comedies are usually 20 to 30 pages, depending on, because a lot of people, you want to kind of, for TV, it's a little weirder because they have commercials and stuff. And so you have to factor that kind of in. You don't factor that in, but the producers have to factor that in. So if you write something that's like 40 pages, they have to cut like 20 pages out, which again, as John was talking about, that's when the 18 writers in the room go crazy and start throwing shit at each other, because it's like, where am I going to cut? I like this part,
Right.
and you always cut the best part, which kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Now, how has that changed? I mean, I'm just thinking about that. That has to have changed with the limited series and the whole, everything that's on, the streaming stuff now. I mean,
Yeah.
everything is different. You don't have any commercials. So now
Right.
it seems to me you can do that 45 to 60.
But you have all the bumpers that go on before the
Sure.
series happens, and all the bumpers that go on after the series. If you notice, HBO's shows are like 27 minutes long if they're a comedy, and 48, 55 minutes long because they have all their bumpers and all their advertising they do for their other stuff. So they do trim that stuff. I would assume that's probably a little bit more freeing because you do, you can go to the edge, and a lot, like if you're like The Sopranos, after 4 seasons, you can go 5 minutes over, but kind of stuff like that is very rare. They'll still trim it. So.
And I can speak to that a little bit. So I'm in the middle of writing a sitcom pilot, but probably it'll get pitched as a limited series, right? But I'm writing and so it's an hour-long pilot for a half-hour sitcom. I'm writing it and thinking that at some point after it was done running, it's going to get split in half. Those first 2 episodes are going to split in half because some cable network is going to pick it up after it's 10 years old and split it into split that hour into 2 half hours. And so I have intentional breaks built into it, even though I'm not pitching it for a network. I have intentional breaks built into it. And at the end of Act 2, it's a 4-act sitcom. At the end of Act 2, it's a cliffhanger into the beginning of Act 3, because someday when it sells, someone is going to split that monster in half. And so that's planned ahead. And everything Joe said is, I agree. You don't know where it's going to wind up, and you don't know what's going to get cut. So I'm sticking to 24 pages on a sitcom, and this pilot will be 45 pages, and be it where it ends up landing, it can grow or shrink from there.
And I will say the one thing that it will scream amateur right away is if you have a 130-page script that you're handing an agent, you want to make sure that you keep it at least under 120. Like for somebody like you, Alison, where you have a sci-fi or something like that, those tend to be a little bit longer, and they're a little bit more forgiving for those, but they still, if you can get it down to 90 pages, they'll think you're very impressive. Mm-hmm. It's perception. It's a stupid perception, but it's...
Yeah, there is a lot of perception, which is also kind of funny because it's not like there's a physical script that they actually have an object that they're looking at and they're like, oh, this one's thicker than the other ones, which I think, a lot of the sort of standards got set in some ways that way.
Mm-hmm.
And
I can tell a funny story about that. I can tell a funny story about that if you want to hear it. I was at a screenwriting conference, and there was a good, at screenwriting conferences, you get these pitch sessions where you can go and you pay and you get to pitch like as many executives as you can. They all have tables and it's a big room, and you go and you pitch your idea, right? And so one of these guys that I was just talking to, I was out in the lobby right in front of where the pitch sessions were happening, and I was talking to him, and he was like, yeah, I'm standing out here because I'm going to grab one of these executives when they come out, right? And he's got his script in his hand. And so one of the executives walks out and he goes, oh, so he starts talking to him, right? And the executive picks up the script and goes, this is too many pages. You have to rewrite it. Like he didn't even look at it. He knew right away that it was over 90 pages because he was being kind of smug and arrogant about it. But, still, I mean, I just found that humorous that, and then I asked him how many pages it was. It was 127. Mm-hmm. And so he just knew. It was kind of weird that, I guess the weight of paper is all the same, but,
But back in the beginning, when I was in school, right, and not sending anything out back in the 90s, the first time I've gone to school for this twice now, which is kind of, I don't know, whatever, but but in the 90s, the first time around, you were taught, I mean, we were printing it out then. It wasn't, they were not emailing anything. That's not, that's relatively new. So we were printing it out. You had to get these little brass, I think they were called brads or whatever, you do a whole punch of thing, and you stick the brass brads in and send it. It was a whole production. And so if your layout, I mean, there was this screenwriter's guide, I remember, I can't remember, I can see the cover, but I can't remember the author. And it's one of the most popular ones, so I'm sure everyone has seen this at some point. But it was so, margins, this, and the other. Nowadays, and if they didn't see it, if the cover didn't look right, or the font was just a little off, they never even opened it.
Mm-hmm.
And you never knew as the screenwriter. You just sent this thing out into the world, hoping, praying it was getting picked up or looked at least, and no one, and for the silliest reasons, no one opened it. Not because your story wasn't any good, just because they didn't even read it. It was too thick or too whatever. And now, though, if you're not using final draft, I want to make that point because I mean, it's one of the silly things I would hate to see an aspiring screenwriter run into. And if we don't get there, I wanted to just say that now. If you're not using final draft and you're using some tool you found online, which that's fun, but I don't even understand how they think they know it's final draft or not when it's put into PDF. I don't know what we're seeing but if it's not, they will toss it now. That's their new, this is the brads are silver. They're not brass, so we're throwing it out. I mean, that's the new thing. And so it's really important, even though like some of these things sound ridiculous to someone coming into the business and just wanting to write and having great ideas. That Joe, the story you just told is not even a surprise to me. And I want people to realize this is like reality, because the very simplest thing that you might make a mistake on can get your piece thrown out and no one even knows what your story is. So
I want to chime in and double down on that. So there are so many new screenwriters who say, well, this one will save in final draft, or you can't tell the difference in PDF. When this one will save in final draft, and this one will save in final draft. Yeah, you're comparing them all to final draft. And there's a reason for that. And someone like Joe, that it was a script reader that has read 100,000 different scripts, someone like me, who I've probably read 1,000 scripts at this point, you can tell, even if you used, I'm not going to say any competitors' names, even if you use a competitor, saved its final draft in PDF, you can tell because the kerning in between the letters and the white space is different. And you can just tell. It's like seeing a Gucci purse and a knockoff Gucci purse.
Nice.
It's exactly what it's like. And so you can tell.
And they don't.
So that's terrifying.
Right. If they see the difference, they throw it out. That's important. I mean, it's really important to know. I mean, I hate to reiterate and keep repeating. It is important to understand if you did not use final draft, it's going to get tossed, or it could get tossed. For an example of, you hear a story about, okay, if we deliver your baby at this hospital, we're going to have to take you, if there's any complication whatsoever, we have to take you to the hospital that's 30 minutes away. Why don't you go to the hospital that's 30 minutes away instead of being taken to it? Start there. Okay, so same thing. Start with final draft. And
there's
actually my soapbox now. Thank you.
It's a great soapbox. There's actually a legitimate industry purpose for that is because they're not investing, and they are investing in your one story, but they're not investing in your one story. They want to know that you have the professional chops, and that's one of the indicators. That's one of your calling cards that you are, because they're investing you in a hopefully a career, and so they buy this one, they want to buy two more, and they don't want to do that with someone who formatted it in Word with a ruler on their own.
And not only and they have to send it to 50 other people. Like, you're going to get a director, you're going to get a DP, you're going to get a storyboard artist, you're going to get, and all of them have only the one program, Final Draft. So it's universal, right? It's like being on Zoom, right? So, it's just a universal thing that everybody knows, that everybody uses Final Draft. It's the one that Tom Hanks endorsed. So guess what? Everybody's going to use it. So.
So can you, because I do not use Final Draft. Joe, you have seen some of my stuff on the page. Is there a different, like, can you see when I send you a PDF that it's not Final Draft?
I don't want to break
throw
your
that
heart.
out there. I don't use Word because Word is horrible.
Yeah, I don't want to break your heart and tell you that, yes, I noticed it right away. Yeah, it's just like John said, there's margins in Final Draft, and there's a reason why Final Draft has done it that way, is because it's unique to them, and the lettering also, but I mean,
where the page breaks fall, how much spice Highland is great. So John August developed Highland, right, for Mac. It's great, but Joe and I can tell the difference if it's a PDF from Highland or a PDF from Final Draft.
Yeah, Yeah, but I mean, I don't care, so that's why I didn't say anything. So I mean, I'm not buying
Well,
your
and
script. So
well, and for my purposes, so I'm using Writer Duet, which is an online platform, and I started using
which
it
is which is what I use too, and they stole it from Final Draft. So basically, they use the same formatting. But yeah,
so like for anybody who's in our audience that wants to dip your toe in screenwriting and get an idea of this formatting stuff that we're talking about before you invest, because Final Draft is not cheap. But Writer Duet is free for the first 3 projects. So if you want to get a feel for it, and my understanding is the interface is quite similar to Final Draft.
very much
Um,
so.
yeah, and I like it because it stores everything on the cloud also, so you don't have to worry about saving. It saves for you. That's something that I really like. Um, and for my purposes, I'm writing my scripts mostly to try to get a job, not to get the scripts themselves made.
Mm.
So that's where I'm at with myself, is I'm writing these pilots as samples to try to get someone interested in putting me in a writer's room.
Mhm.
And so I don't is it a huge deal? Do I need to switch to Final Draft before I start querying? Like, is it that
Well,
big of a deal?
it's kind of like, so we have authors in this audience mostly, right? So it's kind of like they'll all relate to this. It's kind of like taking your book and putting it on Kindle and putting it on Smashwords. They're 2 different formatting formats. So basically you have to format it that way in order to get your book onto Amazon. You have to format it the Kindle way. You also, if you're doing a paperback, you have to typeset it, you have to do a different, so it's the similar idea, right? So you can take it from Writer's Duet and format it. You could push it into a Final Draft formatting where you can use just Final Draft to produce the final product, if that's what you're trying to do, if you're trying to sell that product. Now, if you're just trying to sell yourself, I'm not sure if that matters, but it might. I mean, you might get some hoity-toity industry person that goes, "No, you don't use Final Draft. You're not a professional." But I don't know if I want to work for that asshole, to be quite frank. But
Yeah.
So that's what I was getting ready to say. Every industry has those people, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
real estate or screenwriting or
Right.
banking, there are those people. And so, what, 3 out of 10 maybe? So do
Yeah.
you want the 3 out of 10 to not look at it? And you want to put all your eggs in the 7 out of 10 basket. But there are those people.
Yeah.
I mean, the gatekeepers are still the people from the 90s and this 80s that I'm talking about, and it's unfortunate. I don't think that's great at all, right? But those gatekeepers are still there. So you don't want to run the risk of saying, "Oh, I'm just going to do it this way," because I mean, these people, obviously it doesn't matter. And it does, unfortunately. So I don't know if it matters to get a job, but I think that if I were trying to get the job, and if I struck out enough, I would say maybe it's because I'm sending product that doesn't look the way that they want it to look. Now that you've heard it, right? Now, I mean, because beforehand you hadn't heard it. And I was always like, I didn't even know that. And I'm glad I'm saying it. I'm glad this has come up now, or, just because it's important. Your formatting is important. The tool
Right.
you use is important. How many pages you have is important. And before you even touch the story, it's a shame, but it's the truth.
And I'm not a
And I don't-
spokesman for them, but Final Draft goes on sale all the time. Like on
Yeah.
Black Friday sale lasted like a month and a half, and
Mhm.
it was crazy low price. I don't remember now, but it was super low.
Okay.
And I don't know if
Yeah,
I don't.
definitely formatting is very important. That was one of the questions that came in from the audience, and we do have a couple on the live stream that I'll put to you guys here in just a second. But yeah, there is a particular format that screenplays must have,
Can
and
I
it is.
can
Go
Can I
ahead.
mention just one thing? Because I think Marie mentioned this earlier. I don't know if this is the book that Marie was referring to, but there's a book out there called The Screenwriter's Bible. And that is a format book. It's like a textbook. It shows you exactly how to format everything the way that the industry wants you to format it. And that's what I would use. That's, if you're new to screenwriting format, you want to go get it. It's called The Screenwriter's Bible. And it comes out with a new version every time that Hollywood changes its mind about a comma or the way that you want to indent it, they come out with a new version. So
Thank you, Joe. That's exactly it.
I agree, and I was going to pull it off the shelf, and for some reason on the shelf. So David Trottier is the
there you go.
the guy that writes that, and we're Facebook friends. And what Joe just said, every time, so a new one came out last last year, right? I also use the Hollywood Standard.
Oh yeah.
Because but I use Dave all the time, and we're friendly, so I don't want to say that I don't. But I like the index of this. There's never anything I haven't found in the index, and so it's faster. And then I'll find my fast answer, and then I'll go read Dave and see what Dave said. Like there's things like my character's underwater and we're filming it and I'm writing it from being filmed from above. How do I portray that? That's in here. That's in Dave's thing. And the other thing is both of them, they'll answer emails. If it's a question that they've never asked, if it's not in either of their books, they'll answer their email to you. And so they're both super, I've had emails answered by both of them, and they're both super helpful guys.
Very cool. Okay, so our question from the live stream. Thank you very much, Jorge de Jesus. He wanted to know, for those of you who have sold scripts or had them produced, how much did the director change about your screenplay on its way to being produced? Everybody's laughing.
Kiss it goodbye.
Sit this one out. I will say this. I'll sit this one out. I have not sold anything yet, purely because I started writing them again and said, hey, I want to get back into it. So I'm in talks now, so I can't answer that. But I can tell you, but from the perspective of being, outside looking in, I mean, sometimes it's a brand new thing. It almost doesn't look like what you submitted. It's from what I've been told from my friends who have sold, is that you can get lucky and not much has changed. But you can also find that what you submitted is ending up to be bare bones, like a I don't want to say an outline, but I almost mean that, like just like an outline of the story, and then it changes so exponentially that you're only moderately surprised. So I don't know. I'm gonna sit this one out. I can't wait to hear this answer.
Once you sell it, it's not your baby anymore.
Yeah.
Don't make another baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really depends on the production company too, and how much they want to involve you. Typically, they'll just buy it from you and tell you, here's your money. Thanks a lot, And people have to understand too that just because you get sold doesn't mean it's going to get made like that moment. Things stay in. They call it production hell for a reason, because it stays in rotation for 5 years. Like a lot of these, like if you sell it to like a major production company, like for example, they're waiting for the trend to come around. So if you wrote a script about Mars, they're waiting for Paramount to make the same movie so that they can produce their script and compete. That's the reason why you see 2 Mars movies come out at the same time, is because they have this script and they go, oh, this is going to be good. Whenever Paramount decides to put out their Mars movie, we're going to stick it to them because we got a better Mars movie, and that's kind of how it goes. It just really depends on what you're writing and how the trends are. And if you're writing a horror story and they can look at it and go, I can produce this for, $50,000 and I can get this done in 10 days, I'm going to take that script and run with it. But if it's like a science fiction fantasy where there's going to be sets and all this stuff, and we want Channing Tatum to be in the movie, then you're going to be waiting a while for it to be produced. And at that point, you just take your check and move on. Just like John said, create another baby because it's gone. And oftentimes what they also do, because they have professional screenwriters on staff, something that I did for a little while, is they'll send it to another screenwriter to chop it up and make it more director friendly, or make it more easier for not so smart people to understand, kind of thing, to dumb it down kind of idea, or to brighten it up, or punch it up. We want a car chase here. Can you put a car chase in here? Can you figure out how to put a car chase in here? Kind of thing. And so all that happens, and then your one credit becomes a co-writing credit with somebody else. I mean, or you often see, like on IMDb, you'll see the original screenplay written by, but this was the person who made the produced screenplay, kind of thing. So it really depends on what the production's going to do, and if it's like a very like uber indie production, maybe they get you involved and you might get lucky. The one thing I can say is, if you're a writer and you're selling scripts, typically they'll let you come on set for one day. absorb. If you get that opportunity, just absorb it like a sponge, see how everything works, and enjoy, because that's your moment. That's the moment you're gonna, unless of course you're about to win an Academy Award, in which case the producer then becomes the screenwriter and you don't get to go up there. But you know, you might get lucky and they might say, okay, we're going to let you come to the award show, or maybe even just stand in the background while I accept your award for you, kind of thing. But that's Hollywood for you. That's the kind of treacherous ground you're about to tread. So just do it lightly.
One thing to add to that, what the person who asked the question on the Facebook, they said, how much does the director change it? So Joe touched on this. The producers change it often a lot more times than a director does. And you don't know, like, you don't even know that the producer is friends with someone with a Harley Davidson dealership. And so now your car salesman is selling Harley Davidsons, right? Things like that happen all the time. And that guy, that producer, he gets an associate producer or a minor producer credit because he let you use his dealership and he gave $250,000 to the movie. And so now he gets producer credit and your car salesman doesn't sell cars anymore. That happens all the time.
One little caveat that I will throw out there, just as, again, like, I'm new at all of this, but I have been doing a lot of research about television versus films. And a common phrase that I see is that in films, the director fires the writer, but in television, the writer fires the director. And so because of the longer term commitment that happens, you often have a different director for different episodes of a television show. And so in that way, the writer or the collection of writers, because normally it's a room of writers, it's not just one person. So you might write a pilot, but if you've never run a show before, you don't get to be the showrunner, but you do get to be in the room. And you probably get to make more of the executive decisions. And so that I admit that is another reason that television does appeal to me a little bit more, is that, if anything, any of the pilots that I wrote were to be produced, there would be a higher chance that I would remain involved in the project, as opposed to, you sell a script, you walk away. For movies is much more common. So just my little TV caveat. So another question that I wanted to throw out to the panel, I picked up screenwriting somewhat because I was in a creative funk because of COVID, and just writing novels and short stories weren't working for me, but I still wanted to write. And so I was like, I'm going to try this different medium. And I've been having so much fun learning about how different it is from trying to write other forms of fiction. And so I just want to sort of put it out to the panel, like, what is it about screenwriting that is special and different from other ways that people might be writing the same story?
That visual. I mean, I write novels, I write short stories, I do all that, and I enjoy creating that imagery for, the reader to be able to visualize. But now I can actually write it for the screen so that they don't have to actually think about how to visualize it. I am visualizing it for them and showing it to them. And that's just a rush. I mean, I remember being, just a kid watching movies, any movie, pick your movie. I mean, pick 70s, 80s, 90s movies. And you're in the theater and you're watching that. That's not to disparage any current movie, but I was not a child then. And anything more current than that. But, just it was all encompassing. I mean, the sound, the imagery on screen. Don't let it be a 3D movie and then stuff's flying at you. There was a period where we had like 2 different pockets of 3D movies that became really big. And, you're just, to be able to write that and give someone the same feeling that I had watching those movies, here's an example. I'll pick The Wiz. Anybody remember The Wiz from the late 70s? I mean, the music and everyone's running around and happy, or until we're supposed to be afraid of Eveline, and she was terrifying. It was, oh my gosh, all of that. And I, even as a child, wasn't into fantasy, but that was so spectacular that, if I could have the opportunity to write that and give someone else the same sort of feeling, and you walk away with this, it's with you for like a long time. And that's what I'm enjoying doing. And I love writing anything. So if I get the opportunity to be creative in this format as well, it's always appealed to me.
I enjoy everything that she just said. And to add on top of that, I enjoy the efficiency of it, right? So I'm writing my first novel, and I'm forcing myself to be way more wordy than I normally am. Not that every word doesn't matter, but in a screenplay, every word matters. I really had it hit home to me when I wrote the radio pilot over winter break, because it's all theater of the mind, right? And so there were no visuals, and I'm a pretty good action writer where I'm good at moving the furniture, right? I get these people, how they get to, they don't just show up in the office, or they just don't show up in the car, right? There's a story reason why they get into the car and why they show up at the office, and all of those things, I didn't have to show the office or the car in the radio play, so it was very eye-opening.
I remember going to see Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark when I was a kid, and the opening scene, I wanted to learn so badly about how the hell did they make that so amazingly visual. And from that moment on, I was hooked. I just wanted to write visual elements. And so I think I think it's a great discipline. I think it's a great way to test your mettle as a writer, to see if you can say something that would normally take you 4 sentences into 1 sentence, because I think that's the difference,
Mm-hmm.
and showing and not telling. It's a great way to learn how to show and not tell, so, because if you're telling in a screenplay and it's going to go in the garbage the first page. If I'm reading something and it's like, the flowers wilting in them, God, it's not even, you have to get to the core of the story. You have 90 pages. That's all you have. And if you're not on a 3-act structure at that moment, that from that first page and following it, it's never going to be anything, And so you have to, it's just a good, I found it to be a good discipline, but I just love telling visual stories, just like Marie said. I think she nailed it.
Yeah, the show don't tell advice is fascinating to me, because I see it in the context of the fiction writing groups, and I see it in the screenwriting groups. I think it's something that was pulled from screenwriting that novelists try to apply and constantly misinterpret what it means. Because, in a screenplay, you have sight and you have sound. That is it. In a novel, you've got thoughts and all kinds of other things that you can bring in. But in a screenplay, you have exactly 2 things. You have sight and you have sound to tell your story. And so, the show don't tell, often in a fiction context, gets taken to mean use more words to paint pictures. And when it actually means have scenes that illustrate things about people, rather than
Yep.
telling you that they're generous, have a scene where we see them be generous. And it's so fascinating to see this piece of advice get sort of turned around, and you see, and the opposite is happening, with show don't tell. People get wordier and wordier and wordier because they're trying so hard to show.
I find interesting is that, people think sometimes that they can just write whatever they want. Like, I'm a short story author, so of course I can write novels. No. Don't just assume it. You can, but, I'm a novelist, I can write a screenplay. Like, absolutely not. Now you're the one who's going to have the most trouble trying to write screenplays because of that very reason. I hate to call us wordy because, let me say it a little differently. We have a little bit more space to work with in a novel, right? That's a nice way to say it. And it's the truth, really, because we, as novelists, sometimes we say, okay, our minimum word count should be, if you want a really small novel, it's 60,000 words. Really, a decent one's about 75, 80, That's a lot of words. I'm sorry, listen to what I just said, right? That's a lot of words. So you can speak flourishing sentences as long as you're not going purple with it, right? But you can do whatever. You can say, it can take forever to describe the sunlight hitting the side of the house, whatever. And you do this, and the story isn't necessarily hampered by that because you're setting the scene. If you're doing it properly, you're setting the scene. You're setting up something. You're foreshadowing something. You don't have that space in the screenplay, not at all. I mean, it's just not, and no one wants to hear it. If the sun's shining, the sun's shining. It's daytime. That's it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And there's one key difference.
Right, and that's it. You've already told us.
And there's one key difference between self-publishing and making your own film. And the key difference is that you have to involve other people to make it. If you can't run the camera and be in front of the camera at the same time, you can't run sound. And, you know, I mean, Robert Rodriguez tried it, and, you know, it works only to an extent. He still needed people, you know. You need people, you know, you need other people. So in order to do that, you have to universally speak to them. Yeah. Whereas in a self-published novel, you can dribble for 100,000 words and just throw it out there on Amazon.
Right.
You can't do that in a film. Even if you're making it yourself, it's a collaborative medium. So you have to speak to other people and make sure they understand it too.
Mm-hmm.
And so on this.
Oh, I'm sorry, Alison. Oh, I'll say it real quick.
I was just going to say on.
You say it. You go. You do
it. Just on the subject of collaboration, one of the questions that got sent in was advice about networking. Like, what's the best ways to connect with other people to pitch your script or to find someone who might read it and things like that. But if you wanted to finish your thought before you answer that question, please do.
My thought was so quick. I was just going to say, just because you can self-publish doesn't mean you should. Just because you can make your own film doesn't.
True.
You know,
True.
I mean, there's no vetting process then. I mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't self-publish. I know some self-published authors who have done like phenomenally, and their work is really good. But I mean, that's not the case for the majority of the pieces that are out there. Just take a minute is all I'm saying. Take a minute and, you know, get it looked at. So that was all. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't mean to make it irresponsible like that, but yeah, I was just trying to compare the two. Yeah.
Here's a good example of that. And then then I'll answer Alison's question. But so it's show business, right? And those people that novels, you have to be market savvy, right? If you want to be successful. So those people publishing the self-publishing novels that don't do well, I would contend they are not market savvy. The examples that you just gave me, right? And but if you it's show business, and you have to remember that with a script, and that I think that's a key difference. I work with David Bell, who has 12 best-selling novels that you see at the airport. They're airport novels, right? And proudly so. So like Somebody's Daughter and Bring Her Home and things like that. And he's very market savvy. But those people that Marie is talking about, not so much, right? And so that's a big difference. But so for networking, so I went to the Edinburgh Film Festival, but the last one before COVID, and you just talk to everyone. You never know who you're sitting next to on the bus. You never know who you're sitting next to in a screening. You would have never, when I left to go there, and when I came home, Uwe and Matus, I got to meet them, and they My Friend the Polish Girl, they made the indie My Friend the Polish Girl, which won awards all over the country. I got to bring them to my university and have a screening before the movie was released at my university. I got to meet Ben Elton, who, if you grew up with the MTV The Young Ones, he was the showrunner and one of the writers on that. He wrote 3 Summers. I got to interview Ben Elton for my blog, and so I got to meet one of my heroes. And that would have never happened if you don't avail yourself to just talk to everybody.
I have a similar story. I was at the Austin Film Festival when I was a young screenwriter before I'd ever made anything, and I wanted to experience what a film festival was like to kind of see if I could network. And I had gone to the opening night screening was this terrible remake of a British film called Truth About Charlie, which was done by Jonathan Demme, and it starred Mark Wahlberg and I forget Thandie Newton and whatever. That's not the important part. I was in a bar just down the street because Austin is it's Austin, Texas. There's a street called 6th Avenue and 5th Avenue, and they have all these bars and everything there. And I was in a bar there. there for the after party, and I was just sitting at the bar. I wasn't talking to anybody yet. I just got there, and I was kind of early. And lo and behold, the stool next to me was open, and the guy taps me on the shoulder and goes, "Is anybody sitting here?" I go, "No." And he goes, "Do you mind if I sit here?" I go, "Not at all." I look, it's Jonathan Demme. And I immediately just struck up a conversation with him. He gave me his card. We were talking. I talked about his brother because his brother just passed away recently at that point. And I was telling him about how I saw Blow and how great it was. We were just talking about all these things, and he would go into some horror stories about making films and all these things. And you never know who you're talking to, just as to John's point. So, I mean, I got lucky, but at that moment, it made me realize I got to start talking to everybody, you know, and so I didn't stop talking that entire weekend. I just made sure whoever I was standing next to, I just said, "Hello, how you doing?" and just networked. I think another great way to answer the question even further is to go to screenwriting conferences. Meet the peers that you're competing with and the people that you're going to be working side by side with or around, who might be in the industry at the same time as you. Because if you develop a peer group, you guys can all help each other, you know, and you kind of form a community in that respect. You know, there's a reason why the Brat Pack is successful, because they helped each other when they were coming up, you know, and so kind of those kind of things happen. So you can form cliques and groups and things like that if you meet your peers right away. And so I would definitely, if you're a young screenwriter or somebody trying to pitch for the first time, attend a writers conference and see it all, and go to every panel, try and, you know, get as many panels as you can in, go pitch your idea, do a pitch session, you know, get yourself familiar with that process, because that's the process in which you're going to sell things. So, you know, you can be nervous at those things because, you know, you're going to be pitching to a lot of people, and you learn as you go along, and you figure out what works and what doesn't work and all those things. And I think that's all great practice. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, John and Joe really hit the nail on the head with it in terms of just speaking to everyone. Coming from my perspective, I have done a similar thing, but and this is both worlds, right? Writing or screenwriting, you have to talk to everyone. I was not a big conference goer. I went to a few, but I just, you know, that wasn't my thing. And then I've only, since before the current unpleasantness, let's call it, I had only been to one in-person film festival, which is kind of surprising to me. I don't know how that happened. I meant to go to more, but it just didn't work out. But in doing that, you know, I've gone to several online ones now, obviously, right? And it's the same. I mean, no, it's not in person, no, but there are still breakout rooms where you can meet people, meet and greets. There's still, you know, rooms where you can pitch. There's still all the same stuff is being done online as well. So don't look at it and say, "Oh, I don't have an outlet right now." You do. You still do. You have all the same ones. If the festivals are still happening, they're still doing it in this way. It's not just an award ceremony, you know, and where you come, you watch, and then you don't talk to anyone. And do strike up conversation. I will say this, because you two are kind of entrenched in the industry, and, you know, I'm kind of circling the outside of the industry. But as a writer, we can often feel like we don't want to talk to anybody because all we want to do is be alone with our stories and write this stuff and put it out. And I understand that completely. I want to be honest. I mean, all of this speaking on Zooms, this is fun and everything, but this is out of a lot of people's, you know, comfort zone. And we all know that. I'm going to say it because I know it's the truth. We have to push past that. We really do. And those nerves, they serve us, because if we've got the guts to pay for this thing and go to it, watch the movies, and go into this pitch room and try to pitch something, if we did that, then we have to have the guts to speak out and say something, even if it sounds nonsensical the first time you do it, you know, because you're not going to get, if you sell your work on your first pitch, man, write a book after that about how you did that. That's unusual. So you're going to be nervous, and it's going to be garbage the first couple of times, and that's what's up. It's whatever. You now have that experience under your belt. Mm-hmm. So the next time it'll be easier, you know? Mm-hmm. And I mean, my first film festival is very cool. I won an award. This is the first in-person one. I was dressed for it. Thank God. I went to this thing and said, I'm going to get dressed just for the hell of it. I don't know. I mean, I was dressed for it. but you walk down and then the lights are in your face and you've got to speak. And I was like, thank you. It was the scariest moment ever. And I just was like, oh my God, I can't. But afterwards, when I walked out, there's like when the award ceremony is over, now is when all the talking is. The people are waiting for food, standing around with drinks. I talked with every single person in that room. It was cool because people wanted to talk to me at the moment because I had just stood in front of them and won this award. And it was obvious that I didn't know what to say. And it was kind of, endearing, I guess. But thank goodness, whatever, embarrass yourself and be endearing. But,
Weird and endearing works.
Yeah, listen. So, but the thing is, it scared me to death. Having the conversations afterwards scared me to death. Mm-hmm. But I did them. I've walked away with contacts that I didn't have before. Mm-hmm. I've walked away with, I've met some really amazing indie producers and writers as well. I've gotten into different groups, and there's several different organizations that you can join, that are related to what you're writing. There's online Facebook groups. There's all these places where you can go and talk and learn to talk the talk, learn to, network with people that are peers to you or people that are doing what you're aspiring to do. And generally people are not jerks, generally, right? No one's saying you're not going to bump into a jerk, but more often than not at these film festivals, people are just happy to be where they are. And so have those conversations. Bump into a jerk, move on, right? You can't let a jerk stop you from doing what you want to do. So I say all that to say, as the one who's the newbie here, you guys are pretty well established. I'm not. Joe and John are like working. This is networking for me right now. So as far as I'm concerned, but you just have to, I guess, the ultimate thing I'm saying is, you want this, so go get it. Keep trying.
And the funny thing about jerks is everybody knows they're a jerk. So yeah, and if you talk to a jerk and the jerk treats you like a jerk, somebody's going to come up to you and console you and go, "That guy's a jerk, right?" And they go, "Yeah,
exactly."
And then all of a sudden you've started a new conversation with somebody who's not a jerk. So
exactly.
There's a value in being a newbie too. So I work with a poet professor, right? And he wrote his first screenplay because of COVID. And he has queried one at a time new production houses. It's a tennis movie. Production houses that have done sports movies. And the first 3 queries he got reads. That Joe can tell you that never happens.
Yeah.
He went to IMDb Pro and 3 out of 3. Now he's done 20 so far, and this is just in the last month. He's done 20 so far, and he has had, I want to say 6 or 7 reads out of 20, and he's gotten an answer from everyone except for 4 people. 16 out of 20 answers. That never happens.
Yeah,
but he doesn't know what he doesn't know what he doesn't know, and so I've been like guiding him along. Okay, so now say this, and now say this, and it's so a slight interest has turned into a read, or this is too vanilla for me. Why don't you talk to my buddy at the Hallmark? And right. And so now now he's made new networks and new connections. He's never been anywhere. He's never been to a screenwriting conference. All of that was done online through IMDb Pro. So it's, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are just past the 1 hour mark.
Oh, wow.
So I know time just flew. So I would love to do just one more question to put out to you guys. And this is the sort of, if you could tell your younger self something about screenwriting or, getting into the movie business, what do you wish you knew when you were first starting out?
You don't need Hollywood to make a movie. Stop trying to get famous or get an Oscar with that's the other thing. Don't think you're gonna make it. Don't think you're making an Academy Award movie the first time you ever make a movie or write a screenplay. Just write it and put it out there. And as John said, you could luck into something, or if you do your research, and that's the other thing, do your research. That's what I would tell myself. There's a lot more resources out there than there was when I first got out there. But like I was using IMDb Pro was little bit after I started. So I was using, WGA lists and things like that to try and find my niches and people that I could talk to. But yeah, just do your research, realize that you don't need Hollywood. Movies get made everywhere. In fact, they don't hardly ever get made in Hollywood anymore. They're, because the taxes in LA are absolutely ridiculous. So they go to New Mexico, or they go to Toronto, or they go to places where they don't have to pay crew, union fees, and it's show business again. But that's what I would say.
In my case, I would say, and not everyone will agree with this, but I would say the more work that you do up front, you save yourself so much time at the end, right? So you spend 6 months researching, 6 months outlining, and that people are going 6 months. That's how I do it, right? And so I outline, then I do a full prose treatment, or some people call it a scriptment, right? Where I do a scene by scene prose version. It's almost I don't know what it is, a novella, right? Well, only by paragraph by paragraph. And then when I pop over in final draft, all the hard work's done. And I can work a lot faster. I can make the jokes funnier. I can make the poignant lines more poignant, because I've already it's done in a prose version. And then I can do all the screenwriting things I need to do to it. And I didn't do that when I was new.
Yeah, sort of like writing abstracts of each scene.
Yeah, it really it's just a paragraph, a scene by scene, right? And it's a paragraph, and if I have a joke, I'll put in like dog joke, and I'll know what that is, and then I'll write the dog joke when I write the script.
Right.
I think if I were telling my younger self, you can do it, don't give up. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's true. Don't talk yourself out of it. So often we do, right? I mean, the writers sit in their head a lot. We sit in our heads a lot. We have to live in the world and do what everybody else does, but we also do this thing on the side that hardly anybody that we know does that in our daily life, right? So we talk ourselves out of a lot of things. And I think that it's easy to do when you look at movies that, all of us have had this moment, and I know it's true. You watch something and you're like, my screenplay is better than that. How can this get made if mine isn't getting, and you talk yourself out of writing it. You talk yourself out of then writing it and trying to, show it to people, or work up and do these festivals. You tell yourself you can, but you shouldn't, because you can.
Again, as somebody who's worked in sitcoms, I'm not surprised about anything getting made anymore.
I would say, even though I only started in June, but I would back up to my younger self. Like when I started writing novels, I think I would have tried out screenwriting sooner, because I like it so much that I am sad that I didn't find it before now. But it's very exciting to, and I don't regret the novels that I wrote, obviously, but I do wish that I'd started doing this, because I was already picking apart movies and television. And I had read a couple screenplays and a couple Bibles and things along the way. And I just wish I had started sooner, because I love it. I love it a lot.
Can I give one website out there to people?
Please, yeah.
Drew's Scriptorama. Go check it out if you want to learn how to read screenplays and how they get. They usually post. They have the production drafts. They have the first draft. If they can find it, they'll put it up on their website, and you can read screenplays from movies that you've admired and loved. And they've got like the 7 versions of The Godfather, and they got all the different films you can find. So if you're wanting to learn and read screenplays, that's a great place to go.
Fabulous. Yeah. Any other resources you want to mention real quick? I know the Script Lab is another good place to find screenplays to read. Any other recommendations for people who want to learn online?
Well, I don't even know if I'm not giving a URL at this point. I'm saying to people, watch as many movies as you can in the genre that you want to work in. Because so many times we think we can write something and we have such a limited range of what we've seen. Watch as much, consume as much as you can. So.
All right. Well, thank you everybody so much for coming out to our Q&A today. I just want to give you a chance to each say your name one more time and where people can find you, on the web or anything like that.
I'm Elmarie Wood. You can find me at elmariewood.com. You can find me on Facebook at Elmarie Wood, facebook.com/Elmarie Wood. And also on Twitter at ElmarieWood1. Someone told me a long time ago about branding, and I took that to heart.
Someone didn't tell me about branding a long time ago, so you can find me in two places. You can find me at johnmyerscripts.com, and then you can find me on Twitter and on Facebook at Filmic the Page. Filmic the Page.
And you can friend me on Facebook, Joe Compton, and my Twitter is JoeDream73, and everything else I do is with Go Indie Now. So if you guys want to check out Go Indie Now, it's goindienow.com, Facebook Go Indie Now, YouTube channel Go Indie Now, all this stuff that I do there. So that's me.
All right, and I was your host today. I go by Alison Wieverdick or Phoebe Darqueling, depending on the context. So you can find me at phoebedarqueling.com. I'll drop a link to that in the comments because my name is very hard to spell, which was a bad branding decision by making up my own name. All right, so panelists, hang out. I'm going to end the live chat, but hang out just for a minute. So thank you, people who watched our live stream today, and do feel free to share it. We're also going to have a YouTube version of the video at some point as well. So thank you for joining us at LitCon today.